to find out, what will come out of this. I think the best thing they can do is to have a little uh, task force to help people evaluate systems and bring them to conformance. So instead of saying you cannot use this, it's saying let's keep using it, but we'll help you make sure that it is now conforming to all the standards. And if the publisher is not listening, we'll talk to them.
Next Thursday?
So let me put the mic on. The mic is really helpful. Yesterday or the day when I did not have my recorder.
Yeah.
Because the student was sitting all the way back there. Without the mic in the speaker system, it would not have been recordable because I have a relatively soft voice, and now that I have a cold, it's not helping. Right. So there are 3 things that I have to turn on for this to work. There we go. All right. So what we'll do today is the first thing is someone asked me a very good question last time. It's like how am I going to grade the final project? So the first thing we'll do is to take a look at how I will grade the final project. It's listed as a rubric. It's not entirely complete yet, but I think all of the important components are here. Okay. So for each criterion, I have listed what I would consider an A, which is 100%, what is an F, which is 0%, and everything in between. So we have A, which is 100%, B is centering at 75%, C is centering around 50%, D centers around 25%, and F centers around 0%. And that also matches the way I assign letter grade based on the actual score at the end of the semester. So that's how, that's why things are easy to work with, because it's not starting at 60% and then 70%. I just don't like to work with those numbers because it has to be like, there's 0 to 60 that has only one grade in it. Okay, so we'll talk about the criteria that I'll be using for grading. The first one, which is not necessarily the most important one, is functionality. The question is the submitted program, the app, functional? And I'm not going to compare it to what I think it should be. I will compare it to what you told me that you would do, okay, or what you told me the application is going to be used for. Okay. Several people talk to me, or at least but in their documentation, I can see that the complexity is way too much, and I said, well, you can kind of have a pretend back end. Okay, you don't have to come up with the actual web back end for storing the data. You can just kind of pretend there's a back end, or keep it private. You don't have to use any type of authentication to sign in, because that's not the focus of this class. So except for those cases, this is what I'm going to use for the first criteria is it functional? Can someone actually use the software or the app? Does it have all the necessary function to do what it is supposed to be able to do? So if you think of your app as a firefighting airplane, how do you call those airplanes? Do they have special names?
They probably do.
Okay. But you know what I'm talking about, right? The planes that drop either water or flame retardant. Okay. So if you think about it, in the case of a firefighting airplane, I'll be basically evaluating, how far can it fly? Okay, because some of those actually land on lakes to pick up water and then go back to drop the water on forest fire. Okay, so you need to have a pretty good range in order to be able to do that several times before refueling. Okay, I'll be grading on can it carry enough water or flame retardant payload. Okay, because if it can only carry like 1 bucket of water, then it's not going to be very useful because wildfires tend to be fairly intense and need a lot of water. Does it have the necessary navigation and maneuverability capabilities? In other words, can the airplane turn tightly to go back and drop a second load of water and stuff like that? Now, of course, you're not designing an airplane like that. You are writing your application, but it's the same kind of thing. Is it actually useful? Okay, does it meet all the minimum requirement to for someone to actually make use of the application? So the letter grades are now assigned like this, and A means the submission or whatever project you turn in is exceeding the specification of the documents. So you include extra functionality, okay, things that I thought, hey, this is not even a part of what you said that you would do, and yet you're adding on top of that, okay. So that would be things that are exceeding the expectation, exceeding what you told me that you would do. If the submission meets the expectation or just the specification of what you turn in, both the use case diagram as well as the project plan, that's a B. Okay, it's good. It's a good grade. It's not the top grade because you have to kind of exceed the specification a little bit to get you to A level. A C means the submission meets all the important specification, but missing some of the minor ones. Okay. So some of the minor ones that are not really crucial, not core to the application, I kind of explain what is major. Major means it is core to the application, without which no one has a reason to download and install the app. Minor means it is not core to the application, without which the application is still useful. It serves its main function, it's just not finished entirely as what we thought it would be. A D means the submission only meets some minor specification. It does not meet the core specifications. And F means either nothing is submitted or the submission does not meet even some of the minor specifications. So this is how I try my best to be objective in the description of what is an A, B, C, D, F for this one single criterion. Are there any questions about the functionality criterion? Okay. If there are no questions about the functionality, we can always come back to this if you have any questions. Okay, so I'm not saying that. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. The second one is fit and finish. Okay, now when I say fit and finish, it's not about the visual effect. Okay, I don't really care much about all the splashy stuff. So with this one, I mean just utilitarian usability. Okay, so once again, if you think about a firefighting airplane, this one is evaluating the dashboard. Okay, in other words, you can have the best fuselage design, the best airframe design, the best of everything, but if the dashboard is a mess, well, maybe it's not the best alternative either, right? In other words, if the pilot of an airplane like this has to go through like 6 different steps, just to check how much flame retardant is remaining in the tank, that may not be the best design, right? Because it's not very efficient. It's one of the things where the pilot should be able to kind of just glance at the corner and say, oh, okay, I still have 25%, I can make another round, halfway through a turn, then can say, okay, I only have 25% left, so I think I'll hit this area instead of the entire area, because that is the most important area to hit. Yes?
So, it doesn't necessarily mean the simpleness of the blocks, right? It's just as user-friendly as can possibly get, right?
It's kind of user-friendly, but it's I would call that effective.
Right, effective, but effective doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a stack of code behind that button, correct? Or what?
Not necessarily.
Well,
Not necessarily, right?
As long as it works, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to go through, what I would consider as an A in this particular for this particular criterion. The submission is well designed. Now, what do I mean by well designed? Controls are clearly marked and intuitive to use. So that means you're using the best control component for the job. Okay. For the most part, you can use things, like you can use a regular button as a checkbox. Okay, that's possible because what you do is when you click on the button, you can change the caption on the box itself to reflect whether it's on or off. Okay, change the color, right? But it's not what most people expect. Okay, people expect the checkbox something to be either on or off as a checkbox control. And so that makes more sense. It's more intuitive to use a regular checkbox instead of a button or some other way to indicate, okay, is this on or off? Okay. Except in the case of if it depends on your target audience too. If your target audience are not necessarily people who use computers a lot, and they may have a different way of looking at on off versus true false on off, that sort of thing, then maybe you can use a different type of mechanism for that purpose. Clearly marked means there has to be a caption to tell people what a button does. Okay. Intuitive means people look at it and they should somewhat instinctively know what it is for. Okay, like a slider is for inputting a somewhat continuous value. Okay, so here's another analogy. Okay, you can have a text box to have people to type in a number, or you can have a slider for someone to input a number. Okay, so which one is more intuitive? Well, it kind of depends on what type of number you input in. Okay, if it's just a rough number, let's say it's just from 0 to 10, and the slider is definitely has enough resolution, so you actually have to go a certain distance between let's say 5 and 6. Okay, it's not really difficult to input either 5 or 6. So a slider makes sense in that case, more so than the text box, where people have to pop up the on-screen keyboard, type it in, press the enter key, and so on. On the other hand, if you're inputting something that requires precision, then the slider may not be the best thing to do, because you can only have so much precision when you're sliding on a small screen. Okay, so if you need a really high precision type of input, let's say this is a application for chemistry lab. Okay, then the slider may not be the best way to do it. Okay, it may not give you the right range of numbers either. Okay, because you might have to go from milli something to kilo something, so the range is too much. You cannot just enter that using a slider. So it has to be specific to whatever the control is reflecting. Okay, there's no universal answer and say all numerical stuff should be using a slider. No, doesn't make sense. Okay. It has to be easy to navigate, which means controls are organized logically, and there's no need to search for a feature by visiting all the screens and like, okay, it's not in this screen. What about the next one? No, it's not there either. What about the next one? Okay, so it has to be kind of grouped logically. If you think about this as the dashboard of an airplane, so all the stuff that is related to landing, maybe they kind of belong together. Okay, as one section. So the landing flap, gear, landing gear, all the landing control, is at one corner. For a firefighting airplane, maybe the flame retardant or everything that is related to dropping the retardant or related to flame retardant will be at one place. So instead of having the release mechanism all the way over here, the level or how much retardant is left over here, a thermal sensor over here and all over the place, it's all at one particular place logically, because it makes sense that you will need to look at the control, look at the display, and work with the control, kind of all at the same time. Okay. Or worse yet, have some of the controls under the seat. Let's see, I have to take off my seatbelt first, bend over, find that little knob, flick it, and then pop back up on the seat to look at the display to see, okay, did that work? Nope. Okay, take off the seatbelt again, look under the seat, do some more tweaking. Do you see what I mean? Okay, there are applications like that. Okay, this is one of the things that differentiates Android apps from iOS apps. If you look up articles, there are a lot of discussion like that, because Apple would not let any app like that on the market. They would pull it off. Apple says you do not meet the minimum requirement, off. But Android is like, you can put anything on the Play Store as long as it's not malicious. Okay, you can put it there. Okay, doesn't matter. All right, so the second one is kind of related to the third one. The third one is not about the logical grouping, but more about alignment. So this one is kind of visual. So the controls that are supposed to be related, the alignment, uniformity of font sizes, font, type, and also, whether the controls are easy to use, for people with bigger fingers and stuff like that. That is the layout part. Okay, like putting the cancel button right next to the save button may not be the best layout configuration, because it's easy for someone to press one button accidentally and say, no, I did not mean to save or did not mean to cancel, but I actually hit the wrong button. So some buttons really should be kind of like far away from all of the excuse me, all of the other buttons, because you don't want them to be clicked accidentally. So an A basically meets all of these requirements. Okay, it has to be well designed. Controls are clearly marked. Each individual control is clearly marked and intuitive, easy to navigate, which has to do with the organization of groups of control, and layout, which means within a group or amongst the groups. Visually speaking, it is easy to locate and click on the items, because when things are not kind of like jagged or they're not lined up correctly, not only is it visibly not very pleasing, but at the same time it also affects how people use the interface. Excuse me. A B is basically almost an A, but the layout can use some improvements, or the organization can be improved. I know this is really vague and kind of subjective, but I can't really give you a very objective description of what is a B versus an A. So it's just that an A is like perfect. Okay, a B means something can still be improved. Okay. A C basically means it's barely usable. Okay, that's what a C is. It's barely usable, so it leaves much room for improvement. But if I try hard enough, I can still use it. That's what a C is. A D means it is not exactly usable, and it will require a lot of effort to make use of the application. So if a user, it will have to do a lot of trial and error and searching for a control on the different screens in order to find, okay, so here is how I can do blah blah blah. Okay. And F means no submission, or the application has an interface that really cannot be used. So if someone turns in something, it is very unlikely that I will give an F to fit and finish, because it has to be something that is completely unusable. Some people have. I would have to try very hard to get an F. Okay, if I were to turn in something, it is completely unusable, and yet it has functionality. This would basically be having your flight stick, the control stick, under the seat type of thing. Yeah, or having it facing backwards. So you have to fly the plane, you're facing backwards with a mirror to show you what is in the front. Something along that line. You have to try very hard to get an F in this department.
Evil Knievel's playing.
Huh?
I said Evil Knievel's playing.
Yeah. Or intentionally mislabeling buttons, something like that. Save is actually cancel is actually save, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, what if that was the purpose of the game? Remember the smart tests?
Yeah.
Played the stupid games.
Mislabeling flame retardant and fuel.
Right.
Do you want a fuel dump or do you want retardant dump? Oh, that would be bad. Yeah. Yeah. That sort of thing would get an F.
Rightly so.
I guess rightfully so.
No, wait, what if it was the intention of the app that meet the specifications?
That reminds me of the button that moves around when you try to click it. As soon as the mouse pointer touches the button, it goes somewhere else. Okay, robustness, the last one. Okay, this is the last one that I have time to prepare. It means whether the app is reliable and crash-proof. Okay, so when you look at the previous two items from the perspective of an airplane, or a firefighting airplane, The first one means, oh, it has on paper, it has all the best specifications. It can fly a long distance, okay? Between refueling, it can fly, like, let's say 2,000 miles, which is pretty far for, a firefighting airplane. The top speed is reasonable, it has a relatively good top speed, a lot of payload and stuff like that, okay? The second one means, from the pilot's perspective, or anyone who has to surface the airplane's perspective, everything is easy to access, they're all logical, and everything is good. If the airplane is not reliable, it would still not be a very good choice. So this is what it is about, okay? Robustness means, whether the app is reliable. Does it crash all by itself? Okay, if I input something, so let's say there's a text box for me to enter a number, and I accidentally enter something that is not a number. Okay, because even with a keyboard, the numpad, keyboard, I think you can still easily enter something that is not a number, like using a dash somewhere that it does not belong to, or specify a value that is not within the right range. If the application does not check for those errors and handle it, it might crash. The rest of the program may get an unreasonable value, and as a result, it will crash the application. That is what I mean by reliability. And crash proof. Now these are two different concepts, because crash proof refers to crashing the entire system. What if someone turn off the mobile device altogether, okay, or the entire Android system crashes, okay? What would that do to the application? As far as the end user is concerned, what would that do to the application? And I can tell you many stories about this sort of thing. It's not necessarily a software thing, but it is definitely related to this topic here. My own daughter would try to type, she's in high school, so she has a lot of paper to type. Unfortunately, at her age, she has not developed a habit of saving often, okay? So she would leave Microsoft Word to be open and keep working on it for days and days and days, and it will still be Untitled 1, okay? And sometimes, system just crashes, right? And for whatever reason, Microsoft Word also does not, is not crash resistant. If the system crashes, Microsoft Word does not seem to keep a very good backup and be able to restore and say, okay, I might have lost your last sentence, but okay, the other 600 words are still here, okay? There's no trace, nothing left, okay? Which to me is very amazing, because I use LibreOffice. LibreOffice recovers just about everything.
It does.
Yeah, even before you save it, it's still untitled.
I've done that just for the hell of it to see. I left my system up for 3 days, and it did eventually crash, and it recovered to just find everything except for like one word.
And that's just the application itself doing it, because it behaves the same way in Windows and also in Linux.
Exactly. And for Mac as well.
And that is crash proving. Okay, it's crash proving, not the application itself crashing, but the entire operating system crashes on you. Okay, so the next time you start up the application, it will bring up a window, a box, and say that, well, I noticed that you were working on something when something bad happened. Do you want to recover from that point? LibreOffice has would pop that up. It would nag you until you say either yes or no. It won't let you go if you just say ignore. It won't let you ignore that. So I find that to be a pretty useful, really significant feature of LibreOffice.
I love that feature.
Yep.
It saved me many times. I wish some IDE would have that as well.
And it does that without any input from you.
No,
okay, so it just does it automatically. It just has a really nice backup mechanism behind the scene and be able to do all that. So that's what we're talking about. Okay, crash proof is basically that. So in the case of an airplane, I'm just keep using the analogy. MTBF is a mean time between failure. Okay, for those of you who buy hard drives, that's a fairly commonly used terminology to rate hard drives. Mean time between failure of the engines or the scheduling of maintenance and stuff like that. Is there a backup hydraulic control system? Okay, if one breaks down, is there a backup system so the pilot can still retain control of the airplane? Is the plane aerodynamically stable? Okay, if the computer shuts down, or if the pilot, is like dozing off or something like that, will the airplane drop like a fly? A rock, sorry, not like a fly, like a rock. That's kind of interesting. I know I'm digressing a little bit here, because almost all modern fighter airplanes and bombers are aerodynamically unstable, because they want to have the shape, that has the stealth properties, like it would deflect radar signals and all that stuff. But because of that, and also they want to hide the heat signature of the exhaust. So because of all of these requirements, the airframe itself is actually aerodynamically unstable. A control system on those airplanes have to make adjustments like something like hundreds of times per second in order for the plane to fly straight. If the computer system were to shut down, it would drop like a rock. There's no stability whatsoever. There's no way the plane can fly at all.
Given the type of what could potentially be on those aircrafts, that's not exactly a bad thing. Have it just be destroyed on impact. I mean, not for the pilot, of course.
Right.
We don't want enemies getting our technology.
Or we can fake technology and give them the wrong one.
Yeah.
But that's basically what it is. I mean, it has to be like, by design, it has to be safe. The application by design has to be reliable and crash-proof. So here are this is the rubric of what is an A, B, C, D, F. An A means the application is reliable and crash-proof. The application does not crash under expected normal use and stress testing. Okay, so if the application asks me to enter a number, I will intentionally type in something other than a number to see what it does. Okay, and the program should not crash. Okay, if in order to get an A, okay, an application should not crash even when I'm stress testing it. From that perspective, a slider is nice because a slider, you cannot exceed the two ends of a slider, and it has to be a number. Okay, I cannot really stress test a slider too much. So you might need to include error checking in order to make your program more robust. Okay, every time you say, okay, here's the input, and I'm going to use it for processing, check it first. Okay, is it within the right range? Okay, if it is supposed to be a number, you want to check, is it really a number? When you read something back from TinyDB and you're expecting a list, check whether it really is a list or not before actually processing it as a list. Okay? And the application should maintain persistent data, so that restarting the application after a system crash, not the application itself crashing, but a system crash, will still retain all important data. Okay, which is what I talked about a little bit earlier. Like a word processor, would basically keep track of everything, even before you save the document the first time. So upon a system crash, the next time you start the application, it will say, "Oh, I noticed something was not right last time. Do you want to recover from last time?" B means the application crashes very rarely under stress test conditions. But if I'm not stress testing it, it should not crash by itself. Okay. In other words, if it's asking me for a number, I enter a number, that should not crash it. But if I enter something other than the number, or tricky thing that may be considered as a non-number, that might still crash the application. So that's basically what a B is it does a certain, it's not crashing by itself, but under stress test conditions, it can still break basically. But the B still means that due to the use of persistent data or TinyDB, it can be TinyDB, it can be just a file, it can be getting it from a cloud resource. A user does not lose much in a crash. A C means that the app crashes without stress testing and or loses persistent data. So this means under normal testing condition, when it's asking for a number, I enter a number, and it still crashes. Okay, so under normal use conditions, it is still crashing by itself, or it does not has the ability to store persistent data, and for something that is supposed to be persistent, it's not persistent, and and when the system crashes, I have to re-enter everything. That will basically make the application a C. A D means the application is too simple to crash or require persistent data. Okay, you can always make something simple. I mean, I can always make something simple that it cannot crash, cannot have problems. It's kind of like the Hello World program. How do you crash a Hello World program in C and C++? You cannot. I mean, the thing is not interactive at all, right? So the D basically means the application is way too simple. There's no way they can possibly crash or require persistent data. So there's no need for error checking, for bound checking and stuff like that at all. Or the application does crash often and lose persistent data to the point that it is not very usable. Okay? There's a slight difference. C means it is still usable. It's just that occasionally the end user will get irritated because I just lost everything because it crashed, or or it just stopped working. Okay, I'm just using it under normal conditions and it just crashes on me. That's just frustrating. But it's not to the point where it is not usable. A D means it is to the point that it is not really usable. And F means there's no submission or the application crashes often under normal use without intentionally testing for error checking and is not usable at all. So that's pretty hard to get an F in each area.
Pretty much the only guarantee is you have to submit nothing.
Submit nothing is the guarantee to get an F. Yes. So are there any questions about the 3 criteria that I have outlined here? And these are the same thing that most people use, or they're not exactly the same thing, but most information systems, when people evaluate the information systems, they would usually also evaluate it using similar criteria. Go ahead.
No.
Okay. All right. So with this out of the way, I'm going to continue with the app that we have been working on. So we'll go back to, yep, go ahead.
Just one question. Do you have a date as to when the final project is to be submitted?
It's going to be the last day of instruction,
Okay.
not the final day, but the last day of instruction, right?
So that'll be the Wednesday before the finals week, right?
Correct.
What are we doing for the final anyways? Are we having?
Yes, we are going to have a final. The final has 2 components. One is just kind of multiple choice stuff that you can do on a Moodle, and then the other part is practical. So I will actually give you some code to either debug or to extend, or you have to write some additional code to projects that I give you.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will exercise some of the basic stuff that we talk about in this class. It's not going to be any of the really super duper advanced stuff. No JSON encoding stuff, like that. But you can certainly include that in your project, using JSON encoding for various stuff.
Is there going to be any opportunity to do one final revision to our specification document to you, or was the last one it?
You can submit a revision. It depends on for what purpose you are submitting the revision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can send me an email on that, or we can talk about it after class. All right. So we are going to continue with the application. So we'll go ahead, start up the emulator. If it's the emulator does crash a lot, depending on what we are doing. But I think it does not crash as much when we are not using AI Companion. Actually, this is the wrong thing to do because I don't want to actually start up the emulator. I want to start up the emulator, but not have AI2 connected to it. So I have to locate the commands for App Inventor. The path in Windows is different depending on whether it's an installed version or whether you are running a portable version of it. But I'm guessing that you guys know how to find it already, so I'm not going to talk about it in Windows. But this is how I do it in Linux. Just to locate the command called run emulator. It's the same name in Windows, except it has an extension of .bat. It's a batch file. So this way I can start up my emulator, separately, without any connection to AI2. because I suspect a lot of times it crashes because of AI Companion, which is the app running on the emulator in order to talk to AI2. So that's the reason why it's crashing very often. And for this particular application, because it has multiple screens, AI2 really does not work well in that case. So we'll have to use the same strategy as we did on Monday, which is to get the APK file, install the APK file remotely, and test it that way. All right. All right, so last time we were spending a lot of time on this particular screen. So as it is right now, I would lose points, for the fit and finish, because you can see the buttons, the attempt scores and debug buttons. These are not, of the same, font size as the other ones. So I would lose points because of the layout part of the grading criteria. And also, those two are only for debugging purposes. Okay, it will actually cause distraction to the end user, because the end user will click on attempt scores and go like, oh, what is this? Okay, so I would also lose points because of that. Okay, because it's definitely not user friendly as it is right now. Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue to work on this application today, and what I'll do is to finish up how to use lane number, target number, and attempt number. Originally, I was thinking, record score will automatically bump up the attempt number, which after a certain point it will bump up the target number, and then after a certain point it will bump up the lane number. That can still work. Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
You published the APK, not the AIA for last class.
Oh, the wrong one. I see. Okay. Okay. Let me, before we do anything today, let me publish that one first. So we'll go to. Okay. So let's go ahead and update the file on Moodle, because I don't think you need the APK file.
No.
You need the AIA file instead.
That'd be helpful.
With the AIA file, you can actually reverse engineer. There are
yeah.
tools that allows you to reverse it to Java code,
Yeah,
but not
yeah.
to AIA code.
Unfortunately, no.
It's called APK tool.
I've used it. Yeah, I like that one.
So you can do some tweaks if you want to, with that tool. So let's get rid of this file and give it a new file.
You should make it a drive folder where it's that way anytime you want to upload the .aas, just drop it into the Google Drive.
Oh,
and
okay.
share it with the class, and then
Oh, okay. That's another way to
you
do
don't
it.
have to add it each time.
That's
Just
true.
drag it there and we automatically get it.
Yeah, Google Drive does not have a very good sync plugin to Linux. It has one for Windows and Mac, but there's none for
Third-party
Linux.
one I use.
It's a third-party one?
Yeah, it works pretty well.
Yeah, Dropbox has a pretty good one for Linux.
Dropbox is very good.
Same thing with Spider Oak. Yeah, Spider Oak also has a good one. All right, so that one is done. So now we can go back and do some more coding here. So the coding, is basically saying, if I click on attempt, it will just bump up the attempt number, and it won't terminate. It won't stop until you bump up the target number. Okay, so when you click on the target number, then it will reset the attempt number and bump up the target number instead. Now lane number is a little bit different, because lane number has to wrap around at some point. Okay, so instead of having a long press to set the starting, which is only for the very first lane, lane number needs to know when to wrap around. So there are several ways to deal with that. You can always have it to click first, and then a dialog box pops up via a notifier and basically say, is this the last lane? Should we go back to lane 1 at this point? Okay, so you can always have that question to pop up when someone presses on lane number. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that logic into the program at this point. So when I click on the attempt number, which is my button attempt component here, it will just bump up the number for attempt without affecting anything else. So we go to blocks, and we find which button we are dealing with. Okay, the other thing you can do is instead of writing your code vertically, which is kind of problematic when you are extending one block of code, it will kind of push into another piece of code. If you grow your code horizontally, then you don't have that problem. You end up with a different problem because now you have to read your program kind of sideways instead of scrolling up and down, which is more common with most people. So we'll go ahead and implement the click for the attempt number. And when this is clicked, I just need to bump up the attempt number by 1. Now the attempt number is actually maintained in the configuration list. So I have to look up its attempt string as the key of that particular item in the key pair. So I just have to bump it up. So to bump it up sounds pretty easy, right? I just need to locate a number, bump it up, and then reflect that number on the screen again. But it's not as easy as we think it is because we can't just use a set variable because it's not really a variable anymore. Okay? Yeah, go ahead. We're talking about the attempt number at this point. Okay, just the attempt number, which is easy. We just bump it up by 1 to the next one. Okay, so lane number is a little bit complicated because you have to ask whether we have to wrap around to the first lane, right? Okay, but this one is just 1, 2, 3, or just 1, 2. For most cases, it's just 1 and 2. All right, so let's figure out how to do this. The way we're going to do this is to make use of a procedure that I have written already. So if you look into procedure, you will find update KV list. So this is one thing that we have to use here. But since it returns a value, we need a trash can and say that, okay, the return value is not important in this case. So for that purpose, we have to use a block like this one, initialize local name to something, and I'll just call this my trash can, okay? Because it's just a place to put something that I have no use of at that point. And it can be initialized to anything. It doesn't really matter what it is initialized to. It's kind of like you don't really care what is already in a trash can, because that's not important. All right. So now that we have a little trash can variable, we can say set trash can to the result of call update KV list. Update KV list has 4 parameters. The first one is which KV list are we talking about? In this case, that KV list is our global variable config. So we go to variables again, and then we say get a particular variable, and that's going to be my global variable called match information, not config. I apologize, it is match information. The key, on the other hand, is another global variable. It is a string with just attempt in it. So we go to variables again, get another variable here, and this one is my attempt string. New value is going to be the interesting one because the new value is the old value plus 1. So we need to be able to retrieve the current value first and then add 1 to it, and that becomes the new value. And in App Inventor, you have, go ahead.
Would you need to put an if-then statement right there, or because you also have to test to make sure it's not maximum value?
Well, right now I'm not implementing a boundary for attempt number because when you up the target number, it will reset the attempt number. So that's the way we are working on it right now. But this gives people the maximum flexibility. Like if they want to record more attempts, they don't have to go back to the configuration screen, mess around a whole lot, and then come back here. They just say, oh, you know what, I'm going to record a 3rd attempt on this one. It will all be logged, so when the match director wants to determine who actually wins the match, the match director can say, hey, how come there are 3 attempts here? I will count the lowest 2 attempts, okay? So that will still be okay. So the new value does involve some computation. It's going to be something added to 1. So we'll deal with the easy part first. We'll just specify a 1 here. The difficult part, well, not exactly difficult, but the one that is kind of more complex here, is to get the value corresponding to attempt in the current match information KV pair. Okay, so we have to go to lists here, go all the way to the bottom, and then we say lookup in pairs, and the value is the same. The key is the same as my key here. So I just have to replicate this block here, and we are saying locate the same item from the same list. So it's going to be the same list, which is my match information. So once again, I just duplicate this block here. Now what I do have to be careful is what if it is not found? Well, the chances of it not being found should be none. Okay, but if it is not found, we should probably give it a value of 1 instead. Okay, that should never happen. Okay, that should never happen. All right, so this is also important because the last little notch here is labeled to overwrite or not, basically. That means if I specify a true here, it will overwrite if that key is already existing in match information. If I specify false here, it is not going to overwrite. Okay, if it is not there, it will create it, but if it's already there, it's not going to overwrite. In this case, I do want to overwrite because the whole purpose of this block is to overwrite it with a value that is 1 more than what it used to be. So we do want to specify overwrite to be true, and that's how we're going to update that particular value corresponding to the attempt key. Now, this is all done internally. Nothing is reflected on the display. So if you want the display to also get updated, you need to change the label of the button. There is one procedure written already to update everything. So this is the one to update match information. So we'll just go ahead and make use of the procedure here. Now this particular procedure may seem a little bit excessive because it's not really just going to update one label of one button. It's actually going to update everything. For simplicity, it's actually just fine. Okay, it makes sure that everything is now consistent. So this is the entire click event handler for the attempt button, and we'll go ahead and test it now. This is actually a little bit faster because we don't have to worry about crashing the emulator and having to restart it over and over again. So we say build, get my APK file, and then I switch to my text box and get ready for that too. So in the text box here, the first thing I do is to run ADB. Okay, that one is already downloaded, so I can do that next. But I want to do a /ADB devices, just to make sure that it can now talk to the emulator. Okay, and we can definitely confirm that the emulator is one of the devices, and it's the only device that is attached. So that means when I run ADB commands, it will be directed to that particular device. So now I can say ADB install -R, which means it reinstall if the application is already installed on the device, and locate the path of it. So that will be under my downloads folder, ft_score this is 2.apk. And let me just double check and make sure that is where it is. Yep, it's under my downloads folder. Sometimes I just want to double check to make sure. Okay, there we go. So the next step is ADB would actually upload, install, the application. When this is all done, we'll switch to the emulator and test it. There we go. So now we switch to the emulator and test the installed application. So ft_scorer is right here. ft_scorer2 is here. We click it open. There's the splash screen, which I don't really care at this point, so I'll just start the application. So the only thing I want to test is whether a temp number can go up by 1. But since I have not really set the lane number yet, let's go ahead and set the lane number. So let's set it to 4. And this is not working. Is it supposed to update the target number and the temp number? Okay, I haven't written that code yet. Okay, fine. Okay, so in the code of update match information, I have not included the update of the lane numbers and stuff like that. So let me find it first. Update match number is right here. Nope, there we go. I think there was a little discussion last time too of whether we should turn this block here into its own procedure. You can certainly do that. You know, it's kind of a toss-up. I think that's what we talked about last time. It's a toss-up. So we have to update the lane number, and then we have to update the target number. So this is the lane number string. Now we have the target string. And this one does not have long press to set the starting one, so we get rid of the last component here. We can always just leave this one here, or we can change join to only have 2 parameters. So either way is going to be okay. And now we change the attempt number. It's going to be, oh, I forgot about that one. I forgot about the first word. You know, the second one is going to be target. So we have lane number, target number. You remember to put a space after that, because otherwise the number, the digit, is going to be right next to target, and it's not going to look nice. So I would lose points, you know, because of that as well, because you know it's the fit and finish part is not going to be what most people expect. All right, so this is the temp string. There we go. All right, so this will update all 3 buttons, you know, to reflect the current lane number, target number, as well as attempt number. So let's go ahead and do it again. Build my APK. And this time it's taking a little bit longer. It depends on how many people are turning in jobs for AI to compile. Alright, so it is now downloaded, and I just need to specify the new version of this. There we go. Go ahead and upload, install, and then we can test the application again in the emulator. Alright, so I'll press, give it a 4, and it updates, you know, all of the other ones. So we have target 1, attempt 1. Attempt is the only one that I have put in that logic. So when I click attempt 2, attempt 3, and so on. So that part is now working. I can put the same logic into target, pretty much the same thing. You know, it's not much different. So here's a question that you can consider. It's not something that has a definite answer of yes or no. It's just something that you can consider. Now, when I have to do this to target, you can imagine target button, you know, has about the same kind of code, right? Same structure. The only difference is going to be the key that we plug into the key here, as well as the key that we plug into here. Everything else is going to be the same. So that means it's a good candidate. This entire chunk of code, starting from here, this entire chunk of code is a good candidate to turn into a subroutine, okay? Because we just want to say, okay, which key do you want to, you know, up by 1? Do you want to increment by 1 and then, you know, refresh the entire screen? It's not really clear-cut whether that really should be done or not. The reason why it's not clear-cut is we only have 2 instances of these things, okay? Because the lane number is a special case. It does not fall into this, well, it does kind of fall into this category. I'll explain that next too. So I would turn it into a subroutine, and then you guys can tell me whether it is worth the trouble or not, okay? Once we turn it into a subroutine, you can see the code, you know, using the subroutine, and you can tell me whether it's worth a while or not. So we'll go ahead and make a new procedure. And the procedure does not need to return a result. Okay, so we'll just do a regular procedure here, and we'll take this block of code, duplicate, and stash it here. So instead of moving it, I'm just copying it here, and I have to change the name of the procedure. We can say increment and display something. Okay. The only parameter that we need at this point is the key, the string that is the key of the key value pair list to increment. That is the only parameter.
Maybe have one called key str.
Key str as a parameter.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense to me. So key string, or just key is fine. Either way. So now that we have key string here, all of the static ones, all of the hard-coded ones, we have to toss them away and replace each one with the parameter called key string. All right. This one here is a constant, so we can kind of do that too. We can actually parameterize everything. Okay, not just the key string. We can even parameterize match information, so we don't use a global variable of match information. Okay, I was thinking it was an electrical cord, and I was just thinking, oh no, the projector is going to turn off or something. It turns out to be just the little pull string for the screen. Okay, all right. So, but when we are working on something like this, we might as well, just also, do that too. So we'll go ahead and make the other ones also parameters. So I'll make match information a parameter. So now we get rid of the global variable reference of match information. So we'll replace that with get match info, put it here, and also put it here.
One more. One more down at the bottom.
One more. Oh, down here. Yep. The idea is, the use of constants like one or true, the use of global variables inside the subroutine typically are not very good ideas. Since we're turning into a subroutine, might as well parameterize most of those things. The only one thing that I think is whether it should be parameterized or not, and this one is like, well, probably not in this case, is the one. Okay, now the one that I'm talking about is not this one here, it is this one here. Are we incrementing always by one, or do we want to have the ability to increment by a different number and make it parameterized? That one is kind of odd in this particular application. I don't really see any case where we have to increment by 2 or more. So that's why, I don't really see any need to change it. And it's not a global variable. If it were a global variable, I would have changed it. But since it's just a constant, it seems to make sense in this case. And the name of the subroutine increment does imply it's incrementing by 1. Okay, when we say increment, it is usually implied that it is just increasing by 1. So with that one, I'm not gonna parameterize it. Okay, it will just be a 1 here. So with this done, we can now take out this block here. Okay, and before I take it out, I'll just deactivate it by disabling the block here, and then I will insert a call to increment the display, so that we can test out whether the subroutine is working or not, without risking losing the original code. So match information is my global variable match information here. So we duplicate, stash it here. And the key is a temp string, so we'll duplicate this one and put it here. All right, so now I have just parameterized, a kind of straightforward block, but it is kind of big and clunky. And now it is something that is a lot smaller. Okay, in terms of how much space it takes up on screen, it is now much smaller. So once again, we're going to test the code first. Okay, I don't want to use this code until I know it works, even though it is really copy and paste from the other one. I might still have missed something, so I want to test it first. Are there any questions about what I have just done? Okay. And those are the things that you kind of have to keep asking yourself when you're writing the program. Is as a design decision, should I do this or not? Okay. The fact that you're asking the question and thinking about it and try to determine whether to do it or not is usually already a pretty good sign that you know how to not only write the program, but how to structure a program. Okay. There we go. So now we can. We just tested. We just uploaded and installed it, so we can now run it again, and just make sure the program behaves exactly like before. Okay, because I haven't really added a new function to it. I just reorganized the code a little bit. Yep. Go ahead.
I'm kind of assuming that you're sort of making this as possibly a real app, and I really think that there should be a setup menu where you, at the beginning of the tournament, just so there's no awkward or error, that you can actually enter how many lanes are there and how many attempts per lane. Near and far is pretty much a normal, right? So you don't have to change that. But it seems to me that there should be some kind of an error checking type setup where you can't go past a certain attempt or past a certain lane, maximum lanes.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Yep.
Maybe as part of revision 2, if there's like certain tournaments, like I know for darts there's the Camellia Classic here in Sacramento, where there's always a fixed number of lanes for that tournament. Has for revision 2 you could be able to download certain I don't know what they would call, like maps or something, that tournament that would preset all that information.
Right.
That would be a revision 2 thing, but just an idea.
It depends on how ferocious the competition is, because as far as I know, no one writes apps for this type of application.
Yeah.
So I have all the time I have, until next March.
Exactly. Yeah. But that would be something that would be kind of cool as a expandability kind of deal.
Except for the European market, I think they might. No. They are even colder than we are, so they don't have any matches in the winter either. That's the reason why they don't do matches, because a lot of areas snow, and this is kind of like an outdoor type of activity, and most people don't want to go when it's snowing. Okay, so this is, attempt is working. So now we can see, what we have to do to get target to work, right? Target 1, target 2, target 3. With this code, pretty much, working, instead of just disabling it, now I can go ahead and delete it because, I don't really have need for this block anymore. So it looks much cleaner now. Now we go to target and do pretty much the same thing. Okay, so we replicate this block, stash it here. The only thing we change is one thing. Just the attempt string is now becoming my target string. So now I think we are starting to see the value of turning that whole chunk of code into a subroutine. Because if I did not turn it into a subroutine, there'll be multiple places that I have to make some adjustments, like 2, right? It's not a whole lot more, but it does open up more room for error.
Thankfully, it's only 2. Larger apps could have potentially 16 places where you have the same thing.
Exactly. But now that we turn it into a subroutine, there's only one place I need to change, only one thing that I do need to change. Right, so that's nice. Okay, so now we have target. Target is done. Okay, yep.
And it only took 2 seconds.
Yep, and we can actually get most of the function of lane number to work too. So let's go ahead and do that too. So we'll go ahead and handle the lane click event handler. And for the time being, I'm just going to use the same logic, and this time it affects the lane number. Okay, and now we have all the functionality. We'll go back to this one and say, but what if we are running up against the last lane and we have to go back to the first lane because there's a wrap around for lane numbers. So we'll deal with that later. But we'll go ahead and test the same thing applied to all of the other buttons. Does everybody kind of see how turning this big chunk of code here into a block is really helping not only from the sense of we have to replicate the big block and make a few adjustments each time, and it also makes it easier to read because the program is now in terms of size, it's using fewer number of blocks. It's easier to read. Okay, if I think I did okay with labeling and naming the procedure because now it is really describing what the block is doing. Otherwise, you look at a big chunk of blocks like this one here. After 2 weeks, it may not be very clear to you what it does. But if you name your procedure properly and document, in the procedure itself, then it's always going to tell you, oh, okay, this is doing blah 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 blah. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? No questions? Okay. So let's go ahead and test it again. So you can see that I do a lot of this. Okay, I make some little changes. I test the program again, and then I go do some more changes. This is something that that is only possible recently. Okay, because in the good old days, when we're talking about mainframe computers, you prepare a stack of punch cards, and you cannot even run it right away. You submit your job to someone who is the gatekeeper of the mainframe computer, and your job will be run usually overnight. Okay, and then the next day the operator will give you the output of your job. You cannot just say, I'm going to make like a 2-line change and submit the job again, because you have an entire day to work on the program and not know which part of your change will work or not. And the next day you get the job back, and from the output of the job, then you have to figure out if it is not working. That's the only way you can go about it, is to use the output of the previous night's job and figure out which part of the 200 lines that I wrote yesterday did not work. It's not something that we can even understand today, because we can do something like this. The fact that we have to re-downloading and going back here and re-upload and test it again is already quote-unquote inconvenient to some people. Some people expect everything to be like instantaneous. Okay, I make some change, I click a button, okay, on the screen, and it runs automatically. So that's how programming really has changed over time. And now we have it installed. We'll go ahead and test it again. This is also a good time. I'm pretty sure I talked about it already. Maybe not so much in this class, but I'm pretty sure I talked about it. This is a good time to kind of remind you. There's a movie releasing on the 28th. It's called The Imitation Game. Yep, it's about Alan Turing and the first basically electromechanical computer that starts everything. Okay, everything that we do today. Okay, so attempt is working, target is working, and lane is also working. Now, one thing is definitely not working is when I increase the lane number, it should reset the target number and the attempt number. Okay, so I haven't worked on that part yet. When I increment the target number, it should also change the attempt number. So I haven't worked on that part yet. But you can definitely tell that this particular procedure is useful. Okay, because it changes one particular lane number. We just need to attach some additional code to reset the numbers of some of the other buttons. Okay, so we got about 4 minutes left. I do want to encourage everyone to, well, maybe not watch the movie, but at least I want you to be aware of that movie. Yep.
What was it called again?
I'm going to get you there. The Imitation Game, which is kind of a funny game, funny name.
Also known as the Turing test.
Is it a motion picture or?
It's a biopic of Alan Turing with that guy from public television, Sherlock Holmes, as Turing.
Also, he's the villain in the previous Star Trek movie.
Yes, right.
Yep. The super villain, actually, he's supposed to be like super duper. Okay, so this is an interesting, in many ways it's an interesting movie, especially in a programming class, because it is the origin of everything that we see today. Without Alan Turing, without that whole sequence, that entire series of events, I don't think we have computers like here. We don't have mobile devices. We won't have, computers would not be here or not in the form that we see, today. He is a mathematician. He's not a computer scientist. There were no computers at the time, so he's not a computer scientist, cannot be. He's a mathematician, and he actually did not invent the computer itself. He's the brain behind the theory of how to decode German Enigma code, okay, which was the application of the first computer. The only purpose of that computer is to break code, okay? at the end of close to the end of World War II. But his theory, of computation still stands today. I think he died in the early 50s, maybe 1950, 1951 or so, okay, in his 40s. The guy was only about 40-something years old when he passed.
Well, and he didn't just die, he killed himself because the British government
Persecuted.
Demonized him for his sexual orientation.
And a few other things too. They accused him of sympathizing with the communists and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Despite his contribution to to basically end the war, without losing a lot of casualty on the Allied side. So it's a very very I would say it's a very interesting movie. Yep.
They've sure got the interesting story to work with if they don't let us down with a dumb script.
Yep.
Extra points for going to see it.
Well, only if it can reflect back, as a academic performance kind of thingy.
Only if it goes into your app.
Yes, if the movie inspires you, in some way to make your app
A code-breaking app.
take one notch up. You know what? That may not be a bad thing. Just to have a Enigma app. So when you text your friends,
Yeah.
everything will kind of go through the Enigma machine, so it will appear on the other side, to be encrypted, and then your friend will have to enter that text
Yeah.
using the same Enigma
Decrypt it.
machine and decrypt it. That would be a very interesting. That would be an interesting application. I would not be surprised if it's already out. Like 20 of those apps are already available on the market.
A lot has been written about how Enigma was decoded, and I'll bet all the algorithms are public.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The algorithms are public. The Enigma machine itself, is not flawless. The German had the three military branches, the Army, the Navy, and also the Air Force, just like all other countries. But the three branches operate completely differently when it comes to how to use something and conformance to procedures. The Navy stuck to the rules like glue, okay? They have a little code book. So every day they change the configuration of the disks so that the encryption mechanism will change almost entirely. And they were the last to be cracked because they follow all the procedures. So mathematically it becomes extremely difficult to find any regularity to break the code. The Air Force was the one that were the most lax. They thought that they would just win the war. The Air Force will win this war. Okay, we'll bomb Britain to submission. So they did not follow the rules at all. They just get stuck with one configuration and say that that's good enough. We're the Air Force. What are they going to do to us, right? And they also open each communication with the same text. Okay, which is probably something like "I in love" or something like that, right? But that gave the British a clue of how the encryption works. Because once they know, you know what, the first few words are always da 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 da, and it comes out on this end as da 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 da, they start to figure out, okay, so we are now getting a little bit of insight into the encryption mechanism, okay? And he is the guy who figured it out, okay, who figured out, you know what, we can do it by hand. He figured out the method of how to do it, okay? And at first, they did it by hand, okay? And in the movie, I think they showed, how the technique that they did it by hand, not by computers. And they were able to break code, quickly enough to prevent, to know things before it happens. And that's why, in Great Britain, it was released on the 14th, which is in memory of the Blitz, because they actually broke the code before the Blitz, but they could not tell anyone to evacuate because they did not want to give it away that they already broke the code. So anyway, at the end of the war, the Germans probably figure out something is happening, so they added one more disk to the Enigma machine, which made it impractical for humans to decode it. It is still decodable. It's just that it will take days to decode it, so by the time it is decoded, the information is useless. It has no value anymore. And that's why they invented the computer to do it. Is it the Colossus computer? Yeah, but Alan Turing was not responsible for making the computer, but he is responsible for the theory behind how to program the computer to work. Okay, so this is I think in many ways this is a very interesting story, especially even today. We have a lot of security issues with computers. The RSA fiasco that happened in recent times. So I think this is a very interesting movie from multiple perspectives for this class. And certainly, if you guys want to change your project to implement the Enigma machine, I will let you do it. Okay, change it on the fly and get it done before the end of the semester.
Oh yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Yep.
That's a sure guarantee of losing your job.
Exactly. You got to do